The impact of the House health care vote. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Laura Bischoff, State House reporter for the Dayton Daily News. Jim Siegel, State House reporter for the Columbus Dispatch. Sam Gresham of Common Cause Ohio, and Mark Weaver, Republican strategist. The U.S. House of Representatives have voted to repeal Obamacare dozens of times, but this time it counts because there is a Republican in the White House.
Make no mistake, this is a repeal and a replace of Obamacare. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake. We're going to get this passed through the Senate. I feel so confident. As much as we've come up with a really incredible health care plan, this has brought the Republican Party together.
Among the major changes, the new bill would reduce Medicaid spending by $880 billion. It would give states the ability to trim the list of essential benefits and ease mandates that insurance cover pre-existing conditions. In exchange, the bill would add $8 billion to an insurance pool for people with a high risk of getting sick. It would cut Obamacare taxes and provide tax credits. Democrats say the bill will hurt millions of Americans.
Does Trump Care protect seniors and families? No. Is Trump Care good for our veterans? No. Is there any caring in Trump Care at all?
No. Among Central Ohio representatives, Republicans Pat Tiberi and Steve Stivers voted yes. Democrat Joyce Beatty voted no. Mark Weaver, Democrats paid the price for passing Obamacare back in 2010. Might Republicans pay a price for repealing it?
Probably too early to tell. What will happen in the Senate will be what people remember. If it goes through the Senate like this, people will remember this. If it gets changed in the Senate, people are more likely to remember that. But let's remember that the news stories are out in the last few weeks. There are lots of counties around the country where there are either one choice if you're in the exchange for companies or none. I think Iowa is down to a really desperate state. Virginia is having the same problem. Nearly everyone on both sides, including the Obama acolytes, have said, jeepers, Obamacare needs to be fixed. The question is whether it needs to be trimmed or whether it needs to be replaced, and the people who got elected this last time have said it needs to be replaced.
For those folks in Iowa, in these rural counties that only have one choice, the folks on the exchange only have one choice of insurers, how does this bill fix it?
Well, by giving states the ability to tailor these options more, there's going to be more market-based choices. Everybody wants to make sure that people who have pre-existing conditions can still get coverage, but in each state that's going to look different.
Well, why give a waiver so you can eliminate it, though?
Well, the notion of each state being able to do what's best for that state, and remember, the people who would be doing it would be the legislators who are elected by the people, and they're going to do things that the people either want them to do or don't want them to do. It allows the market to be more present. The people who objected to Obamacare was largely objecting to the notion that Washington knows best. We know that Washington doesn't know best.
You know, it's a sad part. We focus on the exchange. The real test of what will happen as a result of Obamacare and the Republican changes is in the Medicaid extension. And all those people who are on opiates, who are receiving services, all those people who are in the mental health category who are now receiving services, that will be capped in 5 years based on the legislation I've read. So, and believe it or not, most people don't realize that's the largest portion of the people on Obamacare. It's not the exchange, because the preponderance of people get their health care from their jobs. So what are we going to do with this? And Mark, I'll tell you what I call this. It's Trump care now. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying the voters will have an intelligence test. The intelligence test for the voter now is, do they want Trump care or do they want Obamacare?
At the State House, Laura, what is the feeling? I mean, Ohio lawmakers, they hate the Medicaid expansion, which was a major part of Obamacare. They're loath to support it. Wouldn't the Ohio legislature be ripe to ask for one of these waivers to get some flexibility on pre-existing conditions or what has to be covered by insurance?
I think there's a lot of Republicans in the State House who think that Ohio could do better if they had more flexibility and were kind of like unleashed from the regulations of the feds. And Ohio has been pretty innovative in terms of trying to contain costs and do a lot more managed care in the Medicaid program. Medicaid, you know, covers 3 million Ohioans. It covers 1 in every 2 births. It's a massive program. And I think a lot of the Republicans would like to see that. Now, are they willing to start, carving out pre-existing conditions and saying to people who have diabetes or heart conditions or cancer or what have you, to say, sorry, well, we're not going to cover pre-existing conditions anymore, or it's going to be market-based priced for those things, and price a lot of people out of it? That would be hugely unpopular.
I assume, Jim, this will be a huge issue in the Republican race for governor, which is only a year and a half away now. That's going to be the number one question. Will you ask for a waiver to manage this yourself and to eliminate some of these restrictions and requirements?
Oh, absolutely, especially since Jim Renacci voted for the bill in Congress, and he will definitely be one of the key Republicans running for governor. Yeah, and it'll be, it'll add to the questions. It's not just about, do you support Medicaid expansion anymore? It's now going to be about a whole host of more complex questions about what you think, government subsidized insurance should look like in this state. And I would hope that our candidates start coming up with some answers. I mentioned Representative Renacci. He was on CNN yesterday talking about this bill. I'm hoping he develops his answer better than what he was doing there. He was kind of a little bit of a tap dance. But I think a lot of them are doing that now because it's a massive, complex subject that they're trying to get, that even those who voted for it or against it are still trying to get an understanding of the impact. I mean, we don't even have a CBO estimate yet. That's not coming for 2 more weeks. And so the last one said 24 million people would lose their health care, and from what I understand, there isn't a great deal of change in this bill that would probably significantly alter that.
So, Mark, Pat Tiberi and Steve Stivers voted for it. They said this is the first step in reforming the healthcare system. Do we have enough patience to wait for step 2 and 3? And can Congress take additional steps after this?
Well, Congress is going to need to take some steps, and the Department of HHS, through regulations that are allowed to be made, regulations that are consistent with the law certainly are appropriate, are going to have to take some steps. We know this is a complex problem. We know that, for example, some people have been covered by Obamacare, but they can't afford the premiums and they can't afford the deductibles. So they have health insurance in name only for many of them. And this is a complex thing. The market can help more than the government can help, and I think that's what this vote was about. It's a step closer to the market, a step further away from federal government control.
This vote supports my proposition. There's no such thing as a free market-based healthcare system. There's not a one in the world that works. It supports my contention that we need a single player. And if we keep fumbling around like we're doing, we're going to end up with a single player, because this hodgepodge of playing with components is going to really disadvantage a lot of people.
And there's this plan does not have any controls on cost, either, which Obamacare did not either, which is a huge part of the puzzle. At the State House, the budget now is in the hands of the Senate, and it appears it has some more cutting to do. While the House passed budget did make cuts and eliminated some tax cuts, it fell short of being balanced. Then April revenues came in lower than projected, so the Senate now has to find the money to bring the budget into balance before it gets to the governor's desk. Jim Siegel, how are they going to do that?
Well, they've got a variety of ideas in mind already, and some of them involve, frankly, K through 12 education. I think they're going to look to cut back some there. There's a 5.5% cap right now on funding increases each year for education. I wouldn't be surprised if that got lowered, at least for a number of districts, those that maybe aren't fast growing. I think you're going to see them look for ways to try to dig out more money out of Medicaid. I think there were some changes the House made that even the administration was not happy about in terms of long-term care and other things, in terms of putting those folks into managed care, or whether you leave them, pay for service fees in the hospitals in the nursing homes. So there's going to be a variety of ways they're going to look to do this. I've heard they're going to try to cut money out of the prisons somehow, and maybe that's more about transferring more low-level offenders into the communities. Again, the governor was not happy with some of the changes the House made in that respect. But they're also going to have to find revenue, because they're going to get rid of some of the revenue options that the House put in there, such as the gambling options that I don't think the Senate likes, and I know the governor doesn't like.
All those tax breaks have come home. The chickens have come home to roost. All those previous years we've been giving tax breaks to everybody are now finally coming home to roost, and the economy is cooling off. Strayhorn suggested that we go to the $2 billion rainy fund. What's the likelihood of that happening?
Very low. because the governor has said he doesn't want to tap the rainy day fund. Frankly, I think there may be some more likelihood that some of the lawmakers would be willing to do that, because especially with this opioid crisis, there are a number of folks who look at it and say, man, it is raining in Ohio right now. 4,000 plus people dying every year. However, the governor is pretty steadfast, and I've kind of said this before. One of the problems is the governor made the rainy day fund a political issue. They attacked Ted Strickland for reducing the rainy day fund to 89 cents. They attacked Ted Strickland again when he ran for the Senate for the same thing. They've now made using the rainy day fund a political issue, and it makes it harder for them to tap into it and feel like they're not going to be attacked for it.
What about this argument, Mark, that this is what happens when you keep cutting taxes, and it's supposed to help the economy? It's recovered a little, but not what everyone had hoped it, to the level everyone hoped it would, and now the state doesn't have the revenues.
This is as much about the state government relying on federal money coming through, particularly from Medicaid expansion and other sources, and that is going to be running out as it is cutting taxes. Remember, depending on the kind of taxes you cut, it has the ability to stimulate more jobs and bring more growth. And when it comes to talking about tax cuts, I don't know too many Ohioans who think they're undertaxed. I think most Ohioans wish that the government would learn to live on the money it has instead of looking to taxpayers again and again. Ask people on the street if you think they're taxed.
Well, yeah, and they'll
they're gonna
say that.
You know what? Government takes plenty of money from me. Why can't they live within their
But
means?
Mark,
the
they
way
would also say, why y'all keep giving away money to rich people, and now I don't have any services. I don't have anything that helps me. I mean, for the last 5 years, Republicans have given away the kitchen to everybody who put their hand out. Now we need the revenue. There's an economic turn down that's coming. So the question becomes, where's the stimulation? If you've had 5 years of tax cuts, where's all this booming money we should have?
I would argue that it's been going on longer than just 5 years. I mean, the tax reforms have been in place, I think,
Governor Taft.
Since Governor Taft. In 2005, they got rid of the corporate franchise tax, the tangible personal property tax. They put in that commercial activities tax. There have been income taxes. I mean, the only taxes that have gone up have been the sales tax and I think some tobacco taxes, really. Even the gas tax has been the same since, what, 2005 or so?
I think it's longer than that even.
Maybe even a little bit longer than that. So the idea that we're relying on these federal, one-time federal money or whatever, that the pattern has been to give the money back and in the hopes that it's going to spur the economy. You know, there was huge tax cuts in 2005, then we had the meltdown, and we've not seen the job growth through that.
One part of the state budget would give even more power to a little-known group of lawmakers called the Controlling Board. It's a bipartisan group, and they approve spending requests, or they deny spending requests, a large spending request over $50,000. This was the group that Governor Kasich used to do an end run around the legislature to expand Medicaid. The lawmakers now want to give this group more power to monitor and possibly limit Medicaid expansion. Laura Bischoff, this is pretty deep in the weeds, and it can get complicated, but what's going on here?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I think the legislature wants to have more say than just once a year about what's going to happen with Medicaid, and so they set it up in the budget. And I know Jim wrote a whole story on it about making it so that they have to come back every 6 months to have the expansion money spent. And I think there's also a mechanism in there that if the federal reimbursement rate goes below what's already kind of on the schedule, that they would not be allowed to approve the expansion money. So I mean, this is it's a way for the legislature to gain more control. It's interesting because the legislature, I think in lame duck last year, they passed a bill. It got vetoed by the governor to try to have some sort of a review of all state agencies every 2 years or so. And the governor vetoed it, saying, you know, this is overreach. This is why you guys have a budget. You can do your reviews there, et cetera. But it's interesting what's going on there.
Jim, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just reading this wrong, but it seems like the lawmakers do not want to support expansion of Medicaid, but they also don't want to go back to their districts and tell folks who are benefiting from Medicaid that I voted to end the expansion, so let's give it to the Controlling Board.
You got it. That's pretty much that's a lot of what's happening is optics and politics. There's a number of members who do not want to ever have to say, I voted for Medicaid expansion, and whether it be directly or indirectly. And this was done 2 years ago when they passed the budget. They did a similar provision, although they only moved a small amount of money, relatively speaking, it was like $200 million into another fund and said, you need to come to us to ask us to spend this money on Medicaid expansion. Well, at the time, everyone kind of knew, and it turned out that the governor didn't have to come to them for that because of underspending. The governor had plenty of money left in the regular fund to just cover all of it. This time they're moving $5 billion per year into that fund. The governor will have no choice but to come back. Budget Director Tim Keene this week called it a wholly impractical budgeting amendment that would cause major confusion and conflict, and it'll really, he fears, okay, if we come and ask for this money and the controlling board says no, or the controlling board says you get less than what you want, there's a chance that they're still going to have to do Medicaid expansion. They're still going to have to cover these folks. They're just going to have to find ways to cut rates to hospitals, cut rates to nursing homes, or do other drastic things to
the other thing is
work.
that this has to remain in the Senate version and then also make it through a governor's veto, and I can't see that happening.
Although I don't know
Medicaid expansion was, if it was born,
No, I meant giving the control to the controlling board.
That's true. But if Medicaid expansion does be retrenched by the controlling board, it will be ironic, given that it was born there.
By the
and
controlling
could eventually die
Why?
there.
Answer me this, Mark. Why do Republican lawmakers who hate this expansion, why don't they just vote against it? Or why don't they go back to their what are they afraid of if they say, you know what? We need this. We have an opioid crisis. We have working poor who can't afford health insurance. Okay, so you're making 137% over the poverty level. You deserve some
I
help
think
here.
there are some who would not mind supporting it, but there are others who see this as part of Obamacare. And amongst conservative Republican primary voters, Obamacare is anathema. The people
Well, we have
want
Trump
Obamacare
care
to be
now.
stopped. Well, we'll see.
Well, are they
We
afraid
have
of
Trump
ads?
care
Somebody
now.
running an ad saying this.
Sure.
this-
I mean, we see this on both sides. Democrats are afraid to move away from their liberal base, and many Republicans are afraid to move away from their conservative base, and so we're seeing this polarization.
All right, our next topic. It has been a tough year for Democrats. They lost the White House, failed to win back the U.S. Senate, lost even more ground at state houses around the country. Now they are trying to regroup, and one guy is trying to help.
So what I am trying to do now, and believe me, it ain't easy. And believe me, there'll be 14 articles and blogs attacking me today. But I am trying to revitalize and reform the Democratic Party to make it a grassroots party where the doors are open to working people and young people and people of color, people who may not have a lot of money, but who are interested in the future of their communities and their nations.
Still sounding very much like a presidential candidate, Bernie Sanders spoke to the Cleveland City Club this week, and Politico and Axios report that Hillary Clinton next week will form a political group. She's back, Sam. Well, maybe she never left. Well, we'll get to her in a moment. But what's going on with the Democratic Party? Is that the answer that Democrats need, is what Bernie Sanders, an independent like yourself, is trying to preach here?
There's a malaise. There's a process. There's a creepiness. There's a stupidity. And there's some angst over age and the transition of the Democratic Party. Good example, Columbus. The people on Yes We Can are running for reducing the awards that people give to government. They're running on getting the money out of politics. They're running on criminal justice reform. Those are not things that the Democrats usually fight for. The Democrats are in a position where they're stuck. In the old days, maybe we'll get it back and we'll control everything. No, you're not going to get back control. Demographics say you won't do that. So you have to find a way to compromise.
In your list you just made there, jobs was not one of them.
No,
Is that the problem?
no, that's the problem with the Democrats.
That's what I mean. Problem with the Democrats.
Yeah, that's the problem with the Democrats. Fundamentally, community people see crime and criminal justice and money in politics as issues that really affect them. And I know most people don't see poor people or working people caring about that, but that's the reason they say the system doesn't work.
I was pleased to see Bernie Sanders in Ohio. A lot of my Republican friends would gladly bankroll his bus around the country, because as long as an aging socialist, who's saying stuff that's so far to the left, as long as he's involved in Democrat politics, the Democrats will continue to be divided, and it'll be much more difficult for them to become a majority party again, because so many of them love the Bernie Sanders rhetoric, but Bernie Sanders could not win a general election. He's too far to the left.
I never agree with Mark very often, but I agree with him on that.
So, Jim, who's left? Who can unify the Democratic Party?
I don't know. I have no idea who's going to unify them. I don't think anybody is really stepping forward yet. I do think they're unifying more around issues than they are around people right now, and I think this latest healthcare vote is going to continue to help in that manner. I think you're going to see, if they continue down, if they move on to tax reform, I think you'll see more, coalescing against some of those provisions. The usual arguments about, we're too much of the tax cuts are going to the rich, that type of thing. I do think, and just Donald Trump's general ability to polarize everyone, even sometimes on the Republican side.
But that's a sad thing. You can't continually run against somebody.
That's a good point.
And expect everybody to come out and support. What are you offering?
Yeah, the Democrat Party's going to have to be more than the anti-Trump
No, that won't work anymore.
What about this grassroots thing that Bernie Sanders pushed all during his campaign? He says he wants the Democratic Party to be fueled by grassroots and not major funders and Wall Street and major donors. Is that realistic?
When I hear that,
Laura, what do you think?
It definitely takes money to run campaigns. I mean, there's no way about that. But I think in Ohio anyway, I think the Democratic Party needs some new faces. It needs some energy, some charisma, and they need to focus on key issues like jobs and education and the opiate crisis.
Right. But when I hear that, what I hear is his people were millennials. A significant portion of his people were not even registered to vote. They went to the event, but they had no power to vote. Come on, get with the game here. I had millennials in my house for dinner, and they told me they didn't vote because they anticipated that she was going to win. I said, the election's not over until the election is over, fool.
My day.
My day, you actually had to show up
We
and vote.
voted twice in my day. Mark, I mean, when you look at the polls, Americans, they favor abortion rights with restrictions. They favor increase in minimum wage. They favor gay rights. They favor gun control to a degree. But Republicans campaign hard on those issues and still win.
And nearly every one of those questions comes out differently depending on how you word the questions. Americans are largely divided.
Not
nearly
on
50-50
not on background
most of these
checks
issues.
for gun control. That's
Well,
like
which we
75
have,
or 80.
which we have.
Not the loopholes
I
and all that stuff.
Purchased a gun earlier today, took a background check. I mean, we already have background checks for nearly every transaction. And so I deal with a lot of polls. Depending on how you word it, America's divided. That's where we're stuck right now. We're about a 45 to 45% country with 10% in the middle.
No,
and we're stuck there.
No, we're not. We're at war with the past, with the future. That's where we're at. We're warring on what the future is going to be, and the people who are fighting the most are in the past.
All right, let's get to our last topic. Apparently, only 6.7% of us knew about it, but there was an election this week. Tuesday's preliminary election drew a 6.7% voter turnout here in Franklin County, and those who did vote kept the status quo. They kept the senior services levy, which, with its increase in property taxes, and 3 incumbents running for city council easily moved on to the general election, followed by 3 challengers. So no surprises here, but in other cities, voters are not so content. In Cincinnati, Mayor John Cranley was beaten, finishing second in a preliminary. He still moves on to the general. In Youngstown, Mayor John McNally lost his primary and is out at the end of his term. Sam Gresham, why are we so happy? Why are voters so happy here in Ohio, but other cities, a little bit of rumblings?
Within the electorate now, the confidence in the system, and particularly in the Democratic Party. And it's going to happen in the Republican Party because I tell you, this health bill is an intelligence test. Once people figure out what's in it and what their parties are doing, people are not happy with what the parties are presenting to them. They have no vision. They have no understanding of the future. And fundamentally, they don't understand the average citizen's problems.
But in Columbus, it's not showing up in election day. The incumbents are winning easily.
They did, but look at 2 yes, we can.
They have a chance, you think?
They have a chance. And if you look at the numbers on them, if it was just one person, they would have combined for over 16% of the vote, and they would have been 3rd in the election.
I've been saying this for years. Nearly every problem we face in government can be resolved if Americans leaned in, paid more attention to the issues, and elected people with better answers. But because we don't, we get the government we get.
All right, let's get to our weekly off-the-record parting shots, and we will start with you, Mark Weaver.
Over the years here on Columbus on the Record, we talk about a lot of different public affairs issues. I've written about them now in a book called A Wordsmith's Work, which is not only how to write better, but discusses some of the high-profile issues. Mike, I brought you your own signed copy. Available on Amazon. It's called A Wordsmith's Work.
Does it have instructions on how to cut through spin?
It does.
Oh, cool. Sam.
I'm going to agree with Mark again and accept him from the Republican side. There's a revolution coming in the electorate and from the people who work, particularly working people. The Democrat and the Republican parties are going to have to change. Polarization is not the issue. They're not addressing their needs. That's the issue.
Jim.
There's been some talk about, or some action too in the State House regarding the advertisements, publicly paid for advertisements that our statewide elected officials are appearing in. Josh Mandel has been the main culprit, but also John Husted's appeared in some as well. And I think there seems to be a growing sentiment among, now first in the House, now in the Senate, to do more to kind of clamp down on these a little bit, particularly as now we may start seeing some more ads running and as it relates to the drug fight.
And Laura.
You know, the availability of affordable health care is an issue for everybody. Later this month, the Ohio Police and Fire Pension Fund is going to talk about switching from subsidized program for retirees to handing out stipend checks and let them go on the open market. We took a look at all 5 of the public pension systems and they kind of took the pulse of their health care plans, and it doesn't look that great for some of the systems. And the stories are on our website, DaytonDailyNews.com.
All right. And it's graduation weekend at OSU. We have many bright students who work on this show who have that nasty habit of graduating. So we end the show with their list of names to thank them for their great work, and we wish them well in the future. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.